Hey everyone, I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode. David and I are going inside the decision it takes to succeed, and you are going to want to check this one out because you're going to learn a lot about David when he was first starting out and all the things he had to go through to get to where he is today. Check it out. All right, David. This is some good stuff here. So I'm just going to dive right in. We don't have a ton of time.
Dive.
You talked about 7th grade football, and I love it when you talk about some sports. But you talked about remembering, and this must have been a pretty profound effect on you because you remembered seeing like a poster or a quote that said, something along the lines where
it was on the locker room door. The coach wrote it.
The coach
on a piece
wrote
of paper and taped it to the locker room door.
Yeah, so it was practice does not make perfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect. You know who coined that phrase? It's
No
surprising.
idea.
A Chicago guy like yourself. It was the great Vince Lombardi.
Vince did? Yeah.
Vince Lombardi. He had some great quotes. I mean, you got to respect. Even though he's a Packer backer, you got to respect that quote. But it definitely left an impact on you. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you still use that in today's day? Like, practice does not make perfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect. It's a mouthful.
Well, so it's interesting because, it took me a long time to realize this, but I had been studying success since I was a little kid because I was trying to figure out why my childhood was so fucked up, at least the way I was experiencing it. Anyway, when I saw the quote, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, but isn't that what practice is for? Like, to get better so that we're perfect? Like, I don't get it. How do we practice perfect? It was not
Didn't
computed.
compute.
I got it later on, but what stood out to me about that was it was kind of like, don't just show up and give a half-ass effort. Really attempt to do it correctly, right? Work, and if you screw up, change it, but really show up and try to give the correct effort to what it is that you're doing. So if it's, if you're doing whatever to catch a pass or whatever it is that you're doing, or throwing the ball, or however different things in football go, that you're doing them in a way where you understand how it's supposed to be done, and you're practicing how it's supposed to be done over and over and watching yourself actually get better at it. So for me today, one of the things that I think is important is that somewhere along the line, I recognized that doing it right, like trying to get it right the first time, was very important. My father also instilled this into me too. It was like, do it right the first time. Do it right the first time. And I remember when I was a kid and he would catch me not doing something right the first time. Very often, I didn't know I wasn't doing it right the first time until he showed me that I wasn't doing it right the first time. But I think that it really is a whole level of how you think about something. Am I doing this correct? What is the outcome? What are the ramifications? What are the consequences of what I'm doing, how I'm showing up to do something? Because then it makes you really be conscious of the way that you're showing up to do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that then becomes a habit.
Well, and it's 100% important to have like a mentor who's guiding you to tell you that you're not doing it the right way. Because if you think you're doing it the right way and you're not, you're perpetuating a bad habit that you're going to carry with you. So like, as much as I hated it when my coach would point out that I was screwing something up, I needed to realize in that moment that he's telling me this for a reason, not just to be a dick. He's telling me so I don't recreate the habit. Because in theory, if you do it right in practice, it's going to be automatic when it comes time to do it in the game.
Right.
And that's why the greats like Jordan, Kobe, all these other basketball guys we've been studying, they did it in practice so often that they didn't shine away from the moment when the spotlight shone the brightest. They stepped up and they did it. All of the greats are like that. It's because they settled for nothing but perfection in practice and rose to that level when it came time in the game.
Yeah. And the other thing I heard Jordan talk about this, which I thought was very interesting, of how he played harder in practice. Like, he would play as hard as he could go in practice so that when it came game time, it wasn't hard. Right. The idea was like he could be in the moment, be in the game, pivot to whatever needed to happen because he had practiced so hard at doing it that it was actually easier to play the game than it was to practice.
Yeah, it was like a day off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And you can look at that from a business perspective so easily. That transitions so nicely. And I know that a lot of the podcasts lately have been around greatness and primarily on the basketball floor. But let's be honest, the basketball floor is wherever your field of business is.
Right.
And people can be doing that every single day. And I love that it transcends across everything you do in your life. This isn't just about, how people perform on the court or on the field or on the pitch. This is about how you perform in the game of life, because you are on a field right now, whether you like it or not. You are standing in the field of your business, of your work, of whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're putting forward maximum effort in the practice to get better and grow, then the byproduct of that is going to be the success that this episode was about.
Yeah.
I love that.
100%.
I love that. So in this episode, you also talk about decision, huge, and we use the phrase, all it takes is a decision, very often in this company.
Yeah.
So much so that my kids use it at the dinner table. Whenever they're struggling with something, they will say, well, all it takes is a decision. And it's the truth. It is the absolute
100%.
truth. But to the person out there who may be a skeptic, who's listening in, who thought that they made the decision only to realize they're still struggling with the same situation, what advice do you offer to that person around the decision that they thought they made?
Well, I completely understand that. I had a big moment in my life where I came to the realization that I thought I was playing full out. And in all fairness, I was, based on my level of consciousness at the time. But I was also having a problem. So I think we have micro decisions and then we have the macro decisions. My macro decision was to become very successful financially in what I was doing. The micro decision was, here's the steps that it takes to get there. Now, how are you showing up in those steps, right? I thought I was giving it full out. I didn't realize I was stopping short based on an unconscious program that I had. So I've told you this many times. I went to go see a guy at a conference who was miles ahead of me, told him what was going on. He looked at me right in the eye and he said, you don't want it bad enough. And he turned around and walked away. And there's a whole story around that I won't get into right now. But the idea was that I had to rethink my decision and the level of how I was showing up, because I really didn't know that I was not showing up 100%. I was showing up 100% from where my consciousness was. So now it's like, okay, so if you're going to come to me and tell me I made a decision, but it's not working, what about your macro decision? Your macro decision is to get there. Like, if I say I'm going to build a $100 million business, that's my macro decision. I'm going to get there, and I don't know when I'm going to get there, but that's the goal. So all these decisions that I make in the attempt to get there, or in the dedication to get there, some will work, some won't. I may have to learn, I may have to grow, I may have to realize that these little things here and there maybe was a wrong choice, I need to make a new choice, but the ultimate goal doesn't change. I'm still going after the big one. So if a person says to me, well, it's not working, great. So now we need to look at the level of your commitment to what it is that you're doing, because it may be a completely different level of consciousness that you need to be aware of to make a different decision, a different level of dedication to what you're doing to show up differently. I went home immediately that day when the guy said, I don't want it bad enough, and I upped my level, right? Because I was falling short. When somebody would give me an excuse in a sale, I just believed whatever they told me. I didn't know the people were full of shit.
Right.
I didn't know. I just didn't know. I know people can say, well, how didn't you know? That's where I was in my life. I didn't know, right? I didn't have that experience, so I didn't know. So when I found out that that's where I was stopping, I went and I pushed past that boundary immediately. The first thing I went home and did was make a sale to somebody who told me no previously. Like, I was not going to let that stay in my head. The second I became aware of it, I changed it. So that was the decision. The decision was get there no matter what, but you have to be willing to change in the micro decisions, whether it's that you made a wrong pick or you're in the wrong awareness or there's something you don't know. You have to redecide every single day to do it in a way until you come across what is actually successful by seeing the result that you said that you wanted to get.
Yeah, and there's a couple things in that I think is so important, is that you didn't allow like a strong need to be right to tell that guy to fuck off and then do your own thing. You actually listened, even though you stewed a little bit in the car on the way home. You actually listened and you took that advice, which I think is absolutely brilliant, because had you not, you certainly wouldn't be here in this moment, because that was a big growth moment for you.
And most people don't, T.
No, exactly.
They don't. They'd be like, fuck him.
Right.
What a douchebag. I'm not, you fuck him and the horse he came in on.
Totally.
I'm out. Right. And I've watched so many people do that in those moments, and they don't realize that what just happened, even if the guy was a douche, it was the best gift you've ever been given if you would wake the fuck up and realize the gift that actually presents to you.
Yeah, it's so true. So many people get stuck in that moment, and they have such a strong need to be right or worried about making the wrong decision that what happens is they totally go against what was told to them in the moment that was the gift they were waiting for.
Yeah.
And they went in the wrong direction.
Completely.
It's so true. Oh, I love that. Yeah, there would be so much to unpack in that, what you just said. We could talk about that for days, but let's move on to the next one. I love how first of all, let me go back. I love how you talk about micros and macros like that. I've never really heard you say that, and I'm sure you've said it 100 times, but I love that there's like this big overarching decision, this macro decision that's kind of guiding where you're going, but there's all these little miniature micro successes that you're making to get there. It's not like, boom, I made the decision and the success is, whoop, I'm there.
Right.
You are actually taking a lot of these little tiny decisions that are these little tiny successes along the way that are getting you there. And sometimes they take you a little off course, but the macro you hold up in front of you is very, very powerful. Right. Is that something that you learned from when you were first starting out, or is that sort of a bunch of different things that you've learned along the way to get
I think
you
it's
here?
a bunch of different things over time, because in the ignorance of my early days, I did believe it was like you make one decision. It's one decision and you're going to get this success. Right. And it was frustrating because you then commit to that decision, you step into it and you find out like, oh, fuck, like I have to do all these other things I didn't know I was going to have to do. So, I remember the first time I heard Proctor teach. What was he teaching? I think it was he had a program years ago called The Winner's Image, and I'm pretty sure it was in The Winner's Image. It was either that or his Goal Achiever program, where he talked about when you're going to make the decision to go after your goal, you have to answer the question of, am I willing? And I remember him saying, am I willing what? And I'm sitting in the audience. This is before I ever worked with him. I'm sitting in the audience and I'm listening. Am I willing what? What the hell does that mean? And then he started to explain, like, when you make this decision, it's going to affect who knows what areas of your life. And you have to automatically be willing to make the decision to change those things to go after it. Once you create the vision, the successful vision, it then dictates what else needs to be changed. And if you're not willing to change those other things, forget it, hang it up. It ain't going to happen.
Right.
Because there's a price for that success. And the price is dictated by the vision, period. Your vision has a cause and effect a component to it, right? So the vision itself, when you have it, is an effect. There are very specific things that cause that effect to come into being. If you're not going to be the cause or do those causes, you can't expect to get the vision. Right? You can't do 98%, but I don't want to do the other 2%. And it's not going to happen. So the vision dictates what those success decisions along the way are. So I think that, I don't know that anybody actually said it to me. You've got the micro, you've the macro, the micro type thing, but it was insinuated that you have to make this big decision for the goal that you want or the vision that you want. But then you have to make all these other decisions along the way that allow this to take place. And I will tell you, when it first happened, I didn't know that. I just didn't know I didn't know it was going to literally affect every area of my life. That happened over a period of time, because it's kind of like I made this decision. Now here's this big glaring problem. So you figure, okay, so I'm going to change this, make new decisions here, and then it's like whack-a-mole. Then there's a big another problem, and each one of them is showing you why you can't get to this until you take care of this problem. So you've got relationships, and you've got the dedication, you've got the commitment, you've got people you're hanging around, you've got the neighborhood that you live in, who you're listening to, what you're not willing to do. Like, it shows up frickin' everywhere. And as you work into them, you make new decisions, you start to master those things, that vision starts to become more and more clear, and more pieces start dropping in as the reality of a successful decision.
Yeah, totally. And there's no failures when you make the decision. There's only opportunities to grow and opportunities to learn.
Yeah.
And if you stop, then you fail. But if you look at it, you make a decision, it brings you off course, didn't necessarily work, you learn from it, and you go back and you make the next decision and the next decision. I love that you brought up willingness, because I think willingness comes up a ton on this show. And it's really the people, I can only assume that the people who aren't getting the result, even though they said they made the decision to do this, I've got like a Meatloaf song hanging in my head that says, I do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Yeah.
Like I've heard people say this, I'm willing to do anything. They say this at the mic all the time. I'm willing to do anything it takes to be a success in my business. Okay, so go back, sign up, coach with me, we'll get this done. Well, and then they start to backtrack. You know what I mean? Because the willingness, they may think they're willing until they're up against it and they're like, well, I won't do that. And you brought up sales in the episode, and I know that sales is it's a bugger for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, it's so interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You know, because you said be a success in your preparation, and you likened it to sales. Talk more about that.
They'll do anything as long as it's not inconvenient, uncomfortable, or too much money, right?
So true.
If I can be successful without having to do those three things, then I'm all in.
That's
Otherwise, fuck you. I'm not.
Even though sales is what brings money into the company.
It's the only thing that brings money into the company. Right. You know, people don't even think about that. So like it is the number one place where I see people stop in their business. Here's check this out. This is what I get most frequently. My income is up and down. Our sales are up and down. I just don't understand what's causing it. Could you help me figure that out? Sure. Are you consistent with making phone calls and asking people to buy? What do you mean? Are you consistent? Do you do it every day? Or what is your process for actually doing that? And are you committed to it? Does it happen every time? Well, no. Do you think that could be causing the problem? Do I think it can be like if you're not doing it every single day or whatever your schedule is to do it, and you wonder why at the end of the month, one month it's down, next month it's up, next month it's down because you're not consistent with it, it's like it doesn't go in. It doesn't go in because in the moment, all they're thinking about is avoiding the thing that they're uncomfortable doing. And I think that's one of the major issues with this. If a person is making a decision based on instant gratification, right? What feels good in the moment? You're fucked. Sure. It's never going to happen. And instant gratification is like a muscle that gets weaker, right? The more you don't use it, the weaker it gets. And then it's like, I'm just going to take a couch day. I'm just going to binge Netflix today instead of working. And then it turns into 2 days. And then it turns into 4 days. And then you're so disillusioned by what's going on, you start making excuses. It's a horrific process, but it comes from the avoidance of what doesn't feel good in the time and never asking the question, how can I make a decision to successfully feel good about what I'm doing? Because that's a decision also. That's the internal environment that we have to master.
Sure, absolutely. And getting back to consistency, it's, why the tortoise beat the hare.
Right.
You got to do it every day. And one thing that stood out to me really early on in my tenure here in your company was if you're not making a sale every day, you are one day closer to not having a business, period. Like you need to be doing it. And what we see a lot in our company is people come out gangbusters and they have a sense of urgency, right? And then they make a bunch of sales. And then when they get to that place, they take a couple weeks off, and then they can't figure out why a month down the road they have this gap in their income because they're not doing it every single day. When you're on a sports team, you practice every single day for the most part, either watching film or actually doing it on the field, and then you play the game. You don't take time off. People who are in sports, their vacations, they're working out, they're running, they're studying. They don't take days off. The same is true with people in business. We're not talking farming here. Like farmers don't get a frickin' day off. The cows need to be fed. The hay needs to be put in the barn. People in our industry, they can take a time here and there, but you're always thinking about the grand vision. You're always thinking about what's driving you. And if you're not making sales, you're not picking up the phone, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Look, if you're more consumed with when are you going to get some time off, you better rethink what you've picked for a life choice.
And you tell people to get a job.
Yeah, get a job.
Get a job.
There's no shame in getting a job.
No,
absolutely
not.
But listen, you say you want to be successful. You have to come to a level of extraordinary achievement to be mediocre successful.
Yeah.
Right? That's not even being great. Because you're lifting yourself up above the mediocre in life. Mediocre in life does what's easy. They do what they have to do, and that's all that they do. You have to take yourself above that consistently if you're going to even rise above them at all, period.
True.
Now, if you don't want to do that, if you're more concerned with what day do I get off, when do I get to go on vacation, when do I get to stop doing the things I don't like, you probably shouldn't be in business for yourself.
Yeah.
You just shouldn't.
The entrepreneurial mindset is one of, 365. You're doing it every day. All the time. You're always thinking about it. Even when you're sitting by the pool, you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
100%. No, I'd love that.
And I also think that there is a decision that can be made around the success of the thinking about it doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be not fun. It can be totally fun. It can be part of your life in a way where you look forward. You like having it present and up and thinking about it, in your life. It's not drudgery. But if you have lived your whole life and you've watched your family live their whole life, basically working at things that they don't like to do and complaining about that all the time, you associate, all work is like that. But all work is not like that. If you're really doing something you really love, there's always going to be things about it that you don't necessarily like, but you do them because you love the overall thing and you love the overall result. So you can change that thought around what you're doing so that you can allow yourself to move into a different level of thinking, successful thinking, in order to get where you want to go instead of figuring out how the hell do I get out of here.
I mean, even here, there's things that we don't particularly like to do, but we do them because they're a part of the essential, components of being in business.
100%.
And if you're not willing to do those things, then get out, right? That might be harsh, but I'm not going to apologize about that.
It's true.
Did you ever have a hard time or an issue picking up the phone?
The very first, not the first week. The first week is wrong. So the way that I did this was I became a facilitator for Bob Proctor, and this is in '99. And the way that it worked then was you did 3-day weekend. We did a 3-day weekend, I think, Sanibel Island, Florida, if I remember correctly, at a 5-star resort. And basically, they compressed a career of doing seminars and speaking and all that into 3 days, plus the content. So he took you through a little bit deeper level of the content for one program. And then they taught you how to basically set up a room, how to negotiate a hotel contract, how to do some of the business stuff that you need to do to put on a successful.
It's like business in a box. You're getting it all.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And it was light. I mean, because you could only touch a little bit.
Yeah,
in 3 days. Like, think about everything
period
that we do, trying to cram that into 3 days, plus the teaching of the content, right? So anyway, at night, what I was doing was I was up in my hotel room and not out with everybody else partying. I was up in the hotel room making sales calls for the first event that I put on. So when I got done with that teaching event, I was almost completely sold out. My first event was 25 people, right? It was live too. It was a live event. So I had just about everybody in that event. So it was after that event that I started staring at the phone, because the first event that I did was basically my warm list of people from network marketing. So it wasn't that hard to sell it.
Sure.
It wasn't difficult to call them. Once that list dried up, then it was make cold calls, because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I didn't have another list. I didn't have any marketing at the time, nothing. So now it's like make cold calls to individuals. And I spent a week, God's truth, I spent a week staring at the phone. I made a couple calls, but it was mostly a week staring at the phone. And I was started to get, like, you go through this, like, you're procrastinating, and then you're aware that you're procrastinating. So then you got the pressure of that, and you need to get on, but you can't make yourself do it, and you start spiraling. And I said to myself, okay, you can't do this. Like, if you do this for another week, you're going to have to, if you get to the end of this month and you don't have enough to pay the bills, you got to get a job. That was the deal that you made, right? So I'm like, I'm not willing to do that. I've got to get to the bottom of this. And I can see this as if I'm sitting in that room because we lived in a 980 square foot ranch house at the time. 4 kids. We had 3 bedrooms. I converted one of the bedrooms into an office, and I'm sitting there staring out the window of this bedroom onto the front yard in the street, and I'm thinking, what is this about? Because sales was not something that was new to me. Back in the late 80s, I sold for Metropolitan Life. I sold for a duct cleaning company. I sold air filters. I sold, what else did I sell? I sold, when I worked for the petroleum company, I went through a period for about a year that I did sales with them. There were several things that I did throughout my life where I was involved in sales of some kind. So it wasn't new to me.
Sure.
But I couldn't get myself to pick up this fucking phone, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get myself to do it. So I'm like, you need to get to the bottom of this right now. What is this? What is this? What is this? And I got it all the way down to, like, am I afraid to fail? And I'm like, no, that's not it. Because actually, even if I totally destroy this and it blows up, I could go back to the petroleum company. Like, they told me, if you want to come back, you can come back, right? And I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. But so I was like, well, that's not it either. So what is this? And what it was that I was scared to death that I would fail, and all the people that said that I couldn't do this would see me fail, and then I would get, I told you so. It wasn't that easy. If it was easy, everybody could do it. Like, give it up, better stay, keep the job. I couldn't hear that. Because to me, if that stuff got in my head, to be over. My dream would be over. I don't know that if I could have ever recovered from something like that, at least at that place in my mind. So I'm like, okay, that ain't happening. That is not happening. So I also realized I needed a little bit of help. So I called someone that I knew who was a sales trainer. This was a woman who was very prominent for a very well-known speaker out there. I'm not going to say who it is. And I said to her, I need help. This is what's going on. What do I do? And she said, I want you to have 100 conversations in the next 7 days, and you stay on the phone till either they buy or they hang up on you. She said, if you want to break through this, and you need to get through it fast, you need to get over this fear of rejection fast. You need to learn how to have a conversation. You need to learn how to be persistent. You need to learn how to overcome objections. You need to have 100 conversations in the next 7 days, and you need to stay on the phone till either they buy or they hang up on you, period. And I was furious, Tuss. I was furious. Like, if I could have reached through the phone, I'd have ripped her fucking throat out and thrown it against the wall. I was so fucking pissed off. And then I calmed down for a minute, and she said, look, you don't have to do this. You can fail. You can fail. But I'll tell you what, if you don't get over this quick, you're never going to get over it, because that thing is just going to linger in your fucking head, and it's going to fester like a pus oozing sore, and you'll quit. You'll just fucking quit because you can't get over it. She's like, you have a ticking time bomb that is in your head right now, and if you don't crush it, defuse it, it's going to blow up your business. I'm like, I'm in. I'll do it. So I did it. I committed to it. I did it, and it got me over all of that shit. Like, I blew right through. I think I got, like, after maybe 20 conversations, I was done. Like, I just blew through the rest of them, and it was over. I got past it really, really quick. But it was also, I dedicated myself to doing it. I said I was going to do it, and I was going to do it, and I was making calls 12, 15 hours a day.
Sure.
Talking
the time zones.
To people, working the time zones.
Yeah.
I did the whole thing. And then I got on a roll. I made a ton of sales out of that, by the way, right? A ton. Like, I made 2 or 3 months worth of commissions for myself that month. And then it was like balls to the wall after that, because I realized I was actually good at it. So now I'm getting better and better and better and better and better. I'm filling my seminars. I'm filling Proctor's things. Like, it was all out.
Yeah, and you haven't stopped since.
No, never did.
Yeah, no, it's great. What I love about that is you knew that you needed help, and you asked for it.
I asked for help.
That's the problem. So many people, and you've given the 100 call challenge to thousands of people, and there's probably a handful who have done it. And you're right. Yeah, it's crazy, because if they would do that, and I say this because I'm one of those people, a lot of people don't know, is I started in this company in sales, and I used to stare at the phone, and then when I would pick up the phone, I would beg for a voicemail.
Yeah.
And I would never leave a voicemail, because that's not good, but I would just beg for it and be like, okay, well, I made a call today. Oof, that was good. Didn't make a damn sale, right? So I can see how people get stuck in that place, but you asked for help. You did the 100 calls, and it didn't even take you 100 to get there.
No.
You blew through that, and your life was never the same after that.
Right.
I think that's incredible. Another part of that story that I love was early on when you were talking about being in a Proctor seminar on how to run your business, and instead of hanging out in the bar with the rest of the people, you were upstairs building and working on your business. So you were doing on-the-job training at the training. So when people ask me, what separates me sitting down here in the audience versus that success panel that's up there, I immediately think about that story right there, where you are doing the work while you're there doing the work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's what separates people from being good to being great.
Well, here's the thing. When I left my job to do this as a business, I tried to do it in a way that put as many cards in my favor as possible. So I paid off like credit cards. I paid off as much debt as I could. I remember I traded my new car in on a used car so I wouldn't have a car payment. I tried to get as much cushion in there as possible. Well, when it was all said and done, and after I paid the franchise fee to buy this thing and all that stuff, I only had like $5,000 left, enough for 1 month's bills. Right? I had to make money immediately. There was no, I can fuck off.
You didn't have a runway. There was no runway.
I needed to make sales immediately, and I knew it consciously going in. And I'm like, listen, here's the way I looked at it. If I can't make sales now, I can't make them 6 months from now, right?
That's right.
So, and I remember talking with Proctor about it. He's like, the only thing that would stop you from making sales is you not getting on the phone. That's it. Right? He's like, it all depends on how bad you want it.
Yeah. And you made the decision that you weren't going to go back, so the only thing you had was going forward, and forward meant picking up the phone.
Yep.
Yeah, and the beauty of sales is this. If you learn how to do it, you're never going to go without.
No.
Because you can sell anything. If things got bad enough, you could go sell cars. You could sell lemonade on the side of the street. You could get a hot dog cart and sell them in the streets of Chicago. There are things you can do when you master sales, and there is a mastery that can happen if you're willing to do the work.
100%.
And there's people out there that probably cringe when they think about this, and they'd rather build their website or go on a Facebook group or do these things instead of picking up the phone and cold calling. But you learn really early on that, get them to hang up on you or get them to say yes. Period.
100%.
All right. Well, as we walk off on this one, broad stroke question here. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, what does success look like to you? I know it's a broad question, but I would love to know inside your head, what does success look like to you?
I think I really have to agree with Earl Nightingale's definition of success. And he said success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So it is, if you're progressively realizing and doing the thing that you say that you want, you're successful. And that's the way that I look at it. It's not a destination. I have big goals, big dreams that I want. But it's it's literally about, what am I doing every day to get there? Am I doing the things that are necessary to get there every single day? And that's how I view success.
That's incredible. Well, thanks for coming inside, David.
My pleasure.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that. I really get fired up when I hear David tell those stories about when he was first starting out, and I hope you do too. Be sure to leave us a comment down below and tell us a little bit about how you're handling your sales and the decisions that you need to make to succeed. We'll see you on the next one.